I got home early that day. Not because I planned to, but because my boss had a meltdown over some accounting error and shut the office down for the rest of the afternoon. Lucky me, right? So, I figured I'd surprise my wife. Maybe take her out to dinner. After all, 17 years of marriage deserved at least a little effort. I parked in the driveway and noticed something odd right away. A black sedan was sitting across the street. Not in front of anyone's house, just parked there. No one inside, no one getting in or out. Just waiting. I stepped inside and called out, "Lisa? You home?" Silence. Her car was in the garage, and her keys were on the counter. I figured maybe she was in the shower. But then, I saw something that stopped me cold. 2 wine glasses in the sink. Lisa didn't drink wine during the day. Hell, she barely drank at all. I reached out and touched the rim of one glass. Still wet. Something in my chest tightened. A cold weight pressing down on me. I turned toward the hallway, walking slower now, ears straining for any sound. And then I heard it. A small laugh. Not from the bathroom. From the bedroom. Our bedroom. My stomach dropped. I stepped closer, heart hammering so loud I swore they could hear it. The door was slightly open, just enough for me to see the reflection of 2 people in the full-length mirror across the room. Lisa was on the bed, her back against the headboard, wearing that blue dress, the one she only ever pulled out for special occasions. And sitting right next to her, way too close, was a man I had never seen before. Tall, dark hair, a little younger than me, maybe mid-30s. He had his arm around her, and they were both looking at something on her phone, laughing like 2 teenagers sharing a secret. I felt something inside me snap. I pushed the door open hard, and they both jumped. Lisa's face went pale, her eyes wide with panic. The guy? He didn't even flinch. He just slowly turned his head toward me like this was the most natural thing in the world. Lisa shot up from the bed. Smoothing out her dress like that would somehow make this look less insane. "Mark, what are you doing home?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. I was too busy staring at the man who was still sitting comfortably on my bed, in my house like he owned the place. Lisa laughed nervously. This is Kevin. I'm a friend," Kevin interrupted, finally standing up. He held out his hand to shake mine, like this was some goddamn dinner party. I looked at his hand, then back at his face. I could feel my fingers curling into fists. He smirked, like he knew exactly what I was thinking, like he knew I wouldn't do anything. Lisa stepped between us. "Mark, listen, it's not what it looks like, okay? He's just an old friend. He stopped by to catch up, and we were looking at photos from college." I glanced at the wine glasses in the sink, at the way she had been practically pressed up against him on the bed. Kevin, who was still smirking. I took a slow breath and asked, "How long?" Lisa blinked. "What?" I looked straight at her. "How long have you been cheating on me?" Her face twisted. "Jesus, Mark. I'm not cheating on you. You're being paranoid." Kevin chuckled. I turned to him. "You think this is funny?" He shrugged. "I think you're overreacting." Overreacting. That word bounced around my skull, setting something on fire inside me. Lisa grabbed my arm. "Mark, honey, please, let's just talk about this." But I wasn't listening, because something finally clicked in my head. The late-night work meetings. The extra gym sessions she suddenly needed. The new clothes, the perfume, the locked phone. 17 years. 17 years, and she thought I was too much of a wimp to see it. I took a step back, shaking my head. "You know what, Lisa?" My voice was calmer now, almost too calm. "You want to play this game? Fine." Lisa frowned. "What do you mean?" I smiled, but there was nothing friendly about it. "You'll see." And with that, I turned and walked out of the room. I had a lot of work to do. I didn't go back to work. I didn't go to a bar to drown my anger in whiskey like some cliché. I didn't even go for a drive to clear my head. No, I went straight to my office, locked the door, and pulled out my laptop. If Lisa thought I was some clueless idiot, if she thought I'd just accept some half-assed lie and move on like nothing happened, then she had no idea who she married. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw things. I wasn't even going to fight that smug bastard Kevin, though God knows I wanted to. No, I was going to do something worse. I was going to burn their entire little fantasy world to the ground. First, I checked our bank accounts. Lisa didn't know, But I had set up notifications years ago that sent me an email whenever a new charge appeared on our joint credit card. She had always been careful, but no one was perfect. And there it was. Hotel charges, fancy restaurants, a jewelry store purchase that I knew damn well wasn't for me. I started opening statements, taking screenshots, forwarding them to a separate folder labeled Evidence. Then I went to our cell phone records. Lisa's number popped up over and over again, texting and calling one specific number, Kevin's. At all hours. Middle of the night. During the days she was supposedly at work. Even on our anniversary. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. This wasn't some mistake. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a full-blown, long-term betrayal. Next, I checked our home security system. I had cameras outside, of course, but what Lisa never realized was that I had upgraded our system about a year ago. I added a motion-activated camera in the living room, disguised as a regular smoke detector. Not because I suspected her, I just wanted extra security in case we ever got broken into. Turns out, the only intruder in my house was the man sleeping with my wife. I scrolled through the recordings, heart pounding. And then I saw it. Lisa, sitting on the couch, laughing as she leaned into Kevin. Him pulling her onto his lap, hands all over her. I kept watching, my stomach twisting. Kevin kissing her neck. Lisa melting into him like she had never done with me in years. And then, Lisa leading him up the stairs. To our bedroom. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking, but I wasn't sad. I was furious. 17 years. 17 years of loyalty, of commitment, of me busting my ass to give her a good life. And this was how she repaid me? I took a deep breath, then grabbed my phone, and I started making calls. First, I called my lawyer. I didn't want just any divorce lawyer. I wanted the best. The kind that leaves the other party with nothing but regret. Then I called a private investigator. Someone who could dig up every last piece of dirt on Kevin. If he had a wife, a job, a reputation, I was going to ruin him. Lastly, I called Lisa's parents. Because if she thought she was just going to sweep this under the rug, if she thought she could paint me as some crazy jealous husband, then she had another thing coming. By the time I was done, I sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Lisa was going to learn a lesson today. And Kevin was going to wish he had never met my wife. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. Instead, I sat in my office, sipping black coffee and going through every painful, humiliating detail of Lisa's affair. The bank statements, the hotel stays, the recordings. Every time I watched the footage, every time I saw her smiling at him, every time I saw her touching him the way she used to touch me, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just cheating. This wasn't just a mistake. Lisa had built an entire second life behind my back. And I wasn't going to let her walk away clean. At exactly 7 a.m., my phone rang. It was Nick, my divorce lawyer. Nick was a shark. The kind of guy who didn't lose cases, especially not ones involving cheating spouses. I had called him the night before and told him everything. Now he was calling me back, ready to go. "Mark," he said, his voice smooth and professional. "I've gone through the evidence you sent me. Let me be blunt. You have her dead to rights." I leaned back in my chair. "What are my options?" Nick didn't hesitate. "We file for divorce immediately. With this level of proof, you can push for a no-fault, infidelity-based divorce. Given that you're the primary earner and she's financially dependent on you, we can argue that her affair constitutes marital misconduct, which means she gets nothing." I finished for him. "Exactly." I exhaled slowly. 17 years. 17 years of shared finances, a house, a life, and now I was about to wipe her out completely. "Good. File the papers," I said. "Already in motion," Nick replied. "Oh, and Mark. Yeah. You should kick her out today." I paused. "What?" Nick's voice was calm, calculated. "You own the house. She has no legal right to it, and given the evidence, a judge would side with you if this turns ugly. The sooner you get her out, the less chance she has to pull anything. Kick her out." The thought hadn't even crossed my mind. But now that it had, it felt right. Lisa had already destroyed our home. She had turned it into a place where she sneaked around, laughed with another man, betrayed everything we built. She didn't deserve to live here anymore. I hung up and stood, Lisa was still asleep. She always slept late on weekends, usually until at least 9. I walked upstairs, feeling like a stranger in my own home, and opened the bedroom door. She was lying there, tangled in the sheets, peaceful, like she hadn't spent the past year humiliating me. I felt nothing. No sadness. No nostalgia. Just cold determination. I grabbed the suitcase from the closet, tossed it onto the bed, and yanked the covers off her. Lisa jolted awake, gasping. What the hell? I threw open the closet door. Pack your things. She blinked, still half asleep. What? I turned to her, voice flat. Get out. Her eyes widened. Mark, what? I grabbed the stack of printed photos from my desk and threw them onto the bed beside her. Screenshots of her texts with Kevin. Photos of them at the hotel. A still frame from the security footage, her on Kevin's lap, kissing him. Lisa froze. Her face drained of color as she stared at the evidence. Then, slowly, she looked up at me. You went through my stuff? Her voice was shaky, but not guilty. Not apologetic. Just angry. I laughed. Actually laughed. Are you serious right now? Lisa's lips pressed into a thin line. Mark, I was going to tell you. No, you weren't. I cut her off. You weren't going to tell me anything. You were going to keep sneaking around, keep lying, and you thought I was too much of a damn fool to ever figure it out. She flinched. I saw it. The flicker of recognition that I was right. And then, just like that, her face hardened. Lisa crossed her arms. You're overreacting. I stared at her. Overreacting. She had blown up our marriage, made me look like a complete idiot, and she had the audacity to stand there and say I was overreacting? I took a slow, measured breath. Pack your bags. Lisa didn't move. You can't just throw me out. I smiled. I already did. The divorce papers are being filed as we speak. You have no claim to this house. My lawyer says you have until the end of the day to leave, or I'll have the police escort you out. Her mouth fell open. The police, if that's what it takes. Lisa shook her head, laughing bitterly. Oh my God, you're actually doing this. You're really throwing away 17 years over you screwing another man in my house? Yeah, I am. She glared at me. I have nowhere to go. Not my problem. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she grabbed the suitcase, stuffing clothes into it angrily, shoving things around like a petulant child throwing a tantrum. She packed fast, and when she was done, she turned to me, eyes blazing. You know what, Mark? I'm glad this happened. Because you've been a terrible husband for years. Boring. Predictable. No passion, no excitement. Kevin, he made me feel alive again. I just stared at her. Then go be alive somewhere else. Lisa grabbed the suitcase and stormed past me, slamming into my shoulder as she went. I followed her downstairs, watching as she stomped toward the door. She hesitated for a second, then turned back. You're going to regret this, she said, voice sharp. One day, you're going to realize you lost the best thing that ever happened to you. I tilted my head. Then I opened the door for her. Get out, Lisa. And for the first time in 17 years, she listened. Lisa was gone, but I wasn't done. Throwing her out of the house was just step one. She thought I was some pathetic, weak husband who would crumble under the weight of her betrayal. She thought I'd sit around crying, begging her to come back, playing the role of the heartbroken fool while she ran off with Kevin. She had no idea who she was dealing with. By noon, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, going over the divorce paperwork. Nick glanced at me as he slid a document across the table. I had a feeling you wouldn't waste any time. She didn't waste any time screwing another man in my house, I said flatly. Why should I? Nick smirked. Fair enough. He leaned back, folding his hands. Now I've already filed the paperwork. Since you have clear evidence of infidelity, we can push for an expedited divorce. She won't get a damn thing unless you decide to be generous. I laughed. I'm not. Nick nodded, pleased. Good. Then let's talk strategy. And that's when things got interesting, because as it turned out, Lisa had a lot more to lose than I thought. Nick tapped his pen against the table. So I did some digging. Lisa works at Branson & Co., right? Yeah. Well, he said, sliding over another document, their company policy is very strict about workplace relationships. I frowned. What are you getting at? Nick gave me a slow, satisfied smile. Kevin works there too, doesn't he? My stomach dropped. Holy shit. Lisa and Kevin worked for the same company. And if their HR policy was as strict as Nick was implying. I picked up the document, scanning it quickly. And there it was, clear as day. Any employee found engaging in an undisclosed romantic relationship with a coworker, particularly one involving infidelity or conduct that may damage the company's reputation, may be subject to immediate termination. I let out a low whistle. So you're saying? Nick nodded. If we send this to her boss, she's done. I sat back, exhaling slowly. Lisa wasn't just going to lose me. She was about to lose her job, her stability, her entire damn reputation. And Kevin? He was going down with her. I thought about it for a long moment. Then, I slid the document back to Nick. Do it. Nick grinned. With pleasure. By the time I got home, Lisa had already started blowing up my phone. Lisa, 2:15 p.m. mark. We need to talk. Lisa, 2:30 p.m. I know you're mad. But don't do anything stupid. Lisa, 2:45 p.m. Call me. Now, I ignored every message. I wasn't interested in talking. Instead, I turned on the security cameras and waited. Because I knew Lisa, and I knew she wouldn't just walk away quietly. Sure enough, at exactly 6:07 p.m., her car pulled into the driveway. I didn't even get up from the couch. I just watched as she stomped up to the door and started banging on it. Mark, she yelled. Open the damn door. I didn't move. She banged harder. I swear to God, if you don't open this door. My phone buzzed. Nick, I answered calmly. Tell me you have good news. Nick chuckled. HR got the email. They're not happy. Lisa and Kevin are being called in first thing tomorrow morning. I smirked. Perfect. Lisa banged on the door again. Mark, I know you're in there. You don't get to just throw me out like garbage. I stood, stretching lazily. Then finally I opened the door. Lisa looked furious. Her face was flushed, her hair a mess. And for the first time in years, she didn't look like the woman who thought she was untouchable. What do you want, Lisa? I asked, completely calm. Her eyes flashed. You know exactly what I want. You think you can just ruin my life because of one mistake. I let out a short, humorless laugh. A mistake? Lisa, this wasn't one mistake. It was a year-long affair. She crossed her arms. So what? People cheat all the time. It doesn't mean we have to throw everything away. I stared at her. She really didn't get it. She really thought she could just say some empty words and I'd let her back in. I took a slow breath. Lisa, let me make something very clear. You're not just losing me. You're losing everything. Her face flickered with uncertainty. What does that mean? I smiled. You'll find out tomorrow. For the first time, Lisa hesitated. She glanced at my expression, at the certainty in my voice. And she knew. She knew I had done something. Her eyes narrowed. Mark, what did you do? I just leaned against the doorframe. Go home, Lisa. Her jaw clenched. Mark. I stepped forward, lowering my voice. You thought I was weak, didn't you? You thought I'd just sit back and cry while you made a fool out of me. But here's the thing, Lisa. I leaned in, just enough to make her uncomfortable. I'm not the kind of man you can walk all over. She swallowed hard. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. And that was the best thing I'd seen all day. The next morning, I woke up early. Not because I had to, honestly, I could have slept in for the first time in a while. But I didn't. I was too wired. Too satisfied with the way things were unfolding. Lisa had always thought she was smarter than me. That she could cheat, lie, and humiliate me without consequences. She had spent a year making a fool out of me, laughing behind my back, thinking I was too blind to see it. But now, she was the one being played. I made myself a fresh cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, waiting. It didn't take long. At exactly 9:12 a.m., my phone rang. I smiled when I saw the name. Lisa. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Then, on the third ring, I answered, putting her on speaker. Lisa. My voice was calm, almost lazy. What the hell did you do? She shrieked. I took a sip of my coffee. Good morning to you too. You got me fired, she screamed. I leaned back, pretending to think. Did I? Or did you get yourself fired when you decided to screw a coworker behind your husband's back? Lisa's breathing was erratic. I could hear the panic in it. This is insane, Mark. You can't just destroy my life because of… Oh, I absolutely can, I interrupted smoothly. And I'm not done yet. Silence. And then, in a much smaller voice, What does that mean? I grinned. You'll see. And then I hung up. I wasn't going to tell her. That would ruin the fun. But I already knew exactly what was happening, because I had been planning ahead. Step 2. Destroy Kevin. Lisa losing her job was satisfying. Sure. But Kevin? Kevin had smirked at me in my own damn house. He had kissed my wife while sitting on my bed. And he was about to regret every single second of it. I grabbed my laptop, opened my email, and checked my messages. Bingo. Nick had sent me something beautiful, a full report on Kevin. His job history, his marital status. Oh yeah, he was married too. And something extra special. A background check. Turns out Kevin had a history of getting involved with coworkers, a history of shady business dealings. And most interesting of all, a history of cheating on his wife. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. This was gold. I clicked on my contacts and found the number Nick had given me the night before. Kevin's wife. Her name was Sarah, and from the way Nick had described her, she was a woman who didn't tolerate betrayal. I dialed the number. It rang 4 times before a soft, uncertain voice answered. Hello, Sarah? I asked. Yes. Who is this? I smiled. I think you and I have a lot to talk about. I met Sarah at a quiet coffee shop an hour later. She was shaking when she sat down across from me. You're Mark? She asked, gripping her coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her together. I nodded. And you're Kevin's wife. Her eyes darkened. Not for much longer. I smirked. Good. Then we're on the same page. I slid a folder across the table. She hesitated, then opened it. And the moment her eyes landed on the photos of Kevin and Lisa, her hands clenched into fists. She went through everything, the texts, the bank statements, the hotel receipts. And then, she looked up at me, her expression no longer sad, just furious. That bastard, she whispered. I took a slow sip of my coffee. So, Sarah, what do you want to do about it? She looked me dead in the eye. I want to ruin him. I grinned. Perfect. Then let's get to work. Sarah didn't hesitate. The moment she left the coffee shop, she called her lawyer. Within an hour, divorce papers were being drafted. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was what she did next. Sarah went to Kevin's boss. And unlike Lisa, Kevin wasn't just some random employee at Branson and Company. He was a senior manager. A senior manager who had been screwing a subordinate. By noon, Kevin was sitting in a boardroom, getting absolutely annihilated by HR. By 1 o'clock, his termination paperwork was filed. By 2 o'clock, Sarah was freezing all their shared bank accounts. And by 3 o'clock, Kevin was homeless. Because, as it turned out, Sarah owned their house. Not Kevin. She had kicked him out on the spot. By the time the day was over, Kevin had lost everything. His wife, his job, his money, his home. And me? I was just getting started. I was sitting on my couch when my phone rang again. Lisa. I smirked and answered. Yes. You. Her voice was hoarse. Broken. You set me up. I chuckled. I didn't set you up, Lisa. You did this to yourself. She sobbed. I have nothing now. I shrugged. Guess you should have thought about that before you climbed into bed with Kevin. She sniffled. Mark, I messed up. I sighed dramatically. Wow, what an amazing revelation. Too bad it's too late. Silence. And then, in a whisper, can we talk? I grinned. Oh, Lisa. Sweetheart. Darling. I paused for effect. And then, coldly, I said, go to hell. And I hung up. Lisa had played a game she never had the brains to win. And now, she was paying the price. Lisa was finished. Her job? Gone. Her affair? Exposed. Her new man? Fired, divorced, and homeless. But the thing about people like Lisa, they don't know when to quit. I thought she'd take her loss and disappear. Maybe beg her parents for help. maybe crash on some friend's couch. I assumed she'd finally realized that she wasn't in control anymore. I underestimated just how desperate she really was. Because the next morning, I woke up to the sound of someone pounding on my door. Not knocking, pounding. I groaned, rolling over in bed, checking my phone. 6:30 a.m. Who the hell? Then I saw the name lighting up my screen. Lisa. I sighed and ignored it, dragging myself out of bed and heading downstairs. The pounding continued, more frantic now. Mark, I know you're in there. I considered leaving her outside. Let her scream all she wanted. But the neighbors didn't deserve to be part of this mess. So with an exhausted sigh, I unlocked the door and pulled it open. Lisa stood there, looking like hell. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair unbrushed, and she was wearing the same clothes from the day before. For the first time since all of this started, she actually looked like someone who had lost everything. Good. She shoved past me, storming into the house. We need to talk. I leaned against the door, crossing my arms. No, Lisa. We don't. She spun around, eyes blazing. What the hell is wrong with you? I raised an eyebrow. Oh, I don't know, Lisa. Maybe it's the fact that my wife cheated on me for a year, lied to my face, and then had the nerve to act like it was my fault. Her expression twisted. That was a mistake. I scoffed. A mistake? No, Lisa. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or burning dinner. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Over and over again. Her breathing was ragged. I lost my job, Mark. I smirked. I know. She flinched at that. You ruined me. I tilted my head. No, Lisa. You ruined yourself. Her jaw clenched, and for a second, I thought she'd cry. But then, she did something I didn't expect. She laughed. A bitter, hollow laugh. You think you won, don't you? I didn't answer. She took a step closer. You think you've destroyed me. But guess what, Mark? I waited. She smirked. You can't live without me. I blinked. Then, to my own surprise, I laughed. A real, full-bellied laugh. Lisa's face twisted in rage. What's so funny? I wiped a tear from my eye. You honestly believe that, don't you? Her smirk faltered slightly. I took a step forward, towering over her. Lisa, I was happy before you. I'll be happier after you. You were the one who threw away a good man, a good life, a stable future. And now, you have nothing. Her eyes flashed. You'll regret this. I grinned. Lisa, I haven't regretted a single second of this. Her lips parted, and for the first time I saw it real fear, because she finally understood. I wasn't her safety net anymore. I wasn't going to take her back. I wasn't going to save her. And she had nowhere else to go. She took a shaky breath. Please, Mark. I held up a hand. Stop. I don't care. Get out. She swallowed. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. Not my problem. For a moment, she just stood there. Then, slowly, she turned and walked toward the door. She stopped in the doorway, looking back at me. One last attempt. Her voice was soft. You loved me once. I met her gaze. I did. And you threw it away. And then, without another word, I closed the door in her face. And for the first time in 17 years, I felt free. The silence after Lisa left was deafening. For the first time in 17 years, my house, my home, felt different, lighter, like it had been suffocating under the weight of her betrayal. And now that she was gone, it could finally breathe again. And so could I. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed door. This was it. No more Lisa. No more fake smiles, fake excuses, fake love. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying dead weight. I walked to the kitchen, made myself a fresh cup of coffee, and sat down at the table. Then, I opened my laptop and started the next phase. Because as satisfying as it was to watch Lisa and Kevin crumble, there was one more thing left to do. Step 3. Tell everyone. Lisa wanted to play her games in secret. She wanted to sneak around, keep up appearances, and pretend she was innocent. But I wasn't about to let her rewrite history. I pulled up Facebook, and then I started typing. Mark Thompson, asterisk. I never thought I'd have to write something like this, but life has a way of surprising you. After 17 years of marriage, I found out my wife had been cheating on me for over a year with one of her coworkers. She lied to my face, snuck around behind my back, and thought I was too stupid to figure it out. Well, I did. And now she has lost her job, her affair partner has lost his wife and his career, and I'm walking away with my head held high. So, to everyone who knew us as a couple, to everyone who thought we had the perfect marriage, just know this. Some people aren't who they pretend to be. P.S. If Lisa reaches out to you with a sob story about how I ruined her life, remember this, she ruined it herself. I read over it twice. Short, direct, brutal. Then, without hesitating, I hit post, and I sat back to watch the fireworks. Within minutes, the comments exploded. Jason Carter. WTF? Lisa did that? Sarah Mitchell. Oh my God. Mark? I had no idea. I thought you two were happy. Emily Rodriguez, you deserve better. She was always kinda shady, TBH. Jake Warner. Tell me Kevin got what was coming to him. That guy was a smug a-hole. Rachel Peterson. Wait, Lisa got fired? I smirked. Word was spreading fast. And then, the private messages started rolling in. Lisa's best friend. Anna. Mark, I don't even know what to say. I had no idea she was doing this to you. I feel sick. I'm so sorry. Lisa's cousin, Megan. She told us you were being crazy and overreacting. Holy crap. I had no idea she was actually cheating. And then, Lisa's mother. I hesitated before opening the message. Margaret, Lisa's mom. Mark. Please call me. We need to talk. I exhaled. Lisa's parents. I hadn't even thought about them. An hour later, I was sitting in my car outside a quiet diner. I didn't owe Lisa's mother anything, but out of respect, I agreed to meet her. When I walked in, she was already sitting at a booth, stirring a cup of tea with shaking hands. She looked up, eyes red-rimmed. Mark. I nodded and sat across from her. Margaret. She swallowed, voice trembling. Is it true? I didn't sugarcoat it. Yes. She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. Oh God. I leaned back. She didn't tell you? Margaret let out a bitter laugh. She told us you were being paranoid, that you were controlling, that you were overreacting to nothing. I scoffed. Sounds about right. She looked down at her hands. Mark, I don't know what to say. I raised her better than this. I didn't respond, because honestly, I didn't care. But then her eyes filled with tears, and that's when I realized Margaret was ashamed. Not for herself. For Lisa. She wiped her eyes quickly. She came to our house last night, crying, saying you threw her out and ruined her life. I shrugged. She ruined her own life. Margaret nodded slowly. I told her she couldn't stay with us. That surprised me. You did. She looked up, eyes hard. Mark, I love my daughter, but I will not enable this behavior. She made her bed. Now she can lie in it. For the first time since all of this started, I actually felt a tiny shred of sympathy. Not for Lisa, for her mother, because Lisa had disgraced her family, and Margaret was ashamed to be her mother. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I'm so sorry, Mark. You were too good for her. I nodded. I know. And for the first time, I actually believed it. By the time I got home, Lisa had blocked me on everything. I smirked. Coward. But it didn't matter. Because while she was scrambling to pick up the pieces of her life, I was rebuilding mine, and I had never felt stronger. The next few days were quiet, almost too quiet, after everything that had happened. The screaming, the confrontation, the revenge. I expected more from Lisa. Some kind of final tantrum, some desperate last attempt to claw her way back into my life. But there was nothing. No calls, no texts, no unexpected visits. She had simply disappeared. At first, I thought she was just licking her wounds, too humiliated to show her face. But something in my gut told me this wasn't over yet. Lisa wasn't the type to just accept defeat. She was waiting. For what? I had no idea. But I was about to find out. Started with a phone call. Not from Lisa. From my boss. I was sitting at my desk at work when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and frowned. Mr. Lawson, my manager. That was weird. He never called me directly. I picked up. Hey, Mr. Lawson. His voice was tense. Mark, can you come to my office? Something in my chest tightened. Sure. I hung up, grabbed my things, and headed down the hall. My coworkers glanced at me as I passed, whispering. Something was wrong. I knocked on Mr. Lawson's door. Come in. I stepped inside and froze, because sitting across from Mr. Lawson was Lisa. I clenched my jaw. Of course. Lisa turned to look at me, her expression a perfect mix of sadness and strength. A performance for my boss, no doubt. I kept my face blank. Mark, Mr. Lawson said, gesturing to the chair. Have a seat. I didn't move. What's going on? Lisa let out a soft sigh, shaking her head. I really didn't want to do this. I almost laughed. Mr. Lawson leaned forward, looking uncomfortable. Lisa has filed a complaint, Mark. I did laugh then. A complaint? Against me? Lisa folded her hands in her lap, looking at me with wide, wounded eyes. Mark, I didn't want to take it this far, but you left me no choice. My fingers curled into fists. Cut the crap, Lisa. What did you say? She lowered her head, her voice trembling. I told Mr. Lawson the truth. That after I left you, you started harassing me. That you posted lies about me online. That you called my job and got me fired out of spite. I stared at her. You have got to be kidding me. Lisa swallowed. I just wanted to move on, Mark. But you've made it impossible. I was scared to even leave my apartment because I didn't know what you'd do next. I blinked. Then I looked at Mr. Lawson. You don't actually believe this, do you? He hesitated. Lisa provided some evidence. My stomach dropped. What evidence? Lisa slowly reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of printed screenshots. She placed them on Mr. Lawson's desk. He slid them toward me. These are concerning, Mark. I looked down, and my blood ran cold, because there, in black and white, were messages from me. Except, I never sent them. They were fake. One of them read, You think I'm just going to let you walk away? Lisa, think again. I will make sure you regret this for the rest of your life. Another, You destroyed me. Now it's my turn to destroy you. And the worst one, You better watch your back. Accidents happen all the time. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. This lying, manipulative woman had just tried to frame me. I let out a slow breath. Mr. Lawson, you know me. Do you really think I would send something like this? He sighed. I don't know what to think, Mark. But this is serious. If Lisa decides to escalate this legally, I cut him off. Lisa, look me in the eyes and tell me these are real. She hesitated, just for a second. But that was all I needed. I smirked. You forged them, didn't you? Lisa's lips pressed together. That's ridiculous. I turned back to Mr. Lawson. I can prove these are fake. His eyebrows lifted. How? I pulled out my phone. First of all, check the timestamps. These messages supposedly came from me while I was at work. Right? Lisa stiffened. I continued, my confidence growing. Guess what? My company logs everything. Emails, internet activity, phone records. I can request a log that proves I wasn't even on my phone during those times. Mr. Lawson frowned. That would be useful evidence. Lisa's hands clenched in her lap. Mark, I wasn't done. Second, I said, if I really sent these messages, they'd be on my phone too. Want to check? I held out my phone. Go ahead. Search for them. Lisa's face went pale. Mr. Lawson hesitated. Lisa? Lisa shot up from her seat. This is ridiculous. I can't believe you're taking his side. Mr. Lawson sighed. I'm not taking sides. I just need to be fair. He turned to me. Mark, if what you're saying is true, then Lisa's complaint won't go anywhere. Lisa let out a frustrated noise. Fine, whatever. Just forget it. And then she stormed out. Mr. Lawson watched her go, then turned back to me, rubbing his temples. Jesus Christ. I leaned forward. I need you to understand something, sir. Lisa is a liar. She's desperate, and she's trying to drag me down with her. I would never do what she's accusing me of. He sighed. I believe you, Mark, but be careful. People like Lisa don't stop until they have nothing left to lose. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. I had won this round. But Lisa, She was getting desperate. And desperate people do stupid things. Lisa was unraveling. I could feel it. She had tried to ruin my job. She had tried to paint me as some stalker, some vengeful psycho ex-husband. And when that failed, when I had shut her down completely, she had no other moves left to play. Or so I thought. Because Lisa was like a cornered animal now. And a cornered animal doesn't think. It just lashes out. The next morning, I was running late for work. I had barely slept. My mind kept replaying what had happened in my boss's office, Lisa's fake messages, her pathetic attempt at framing me. I had dodged the bullet, but I knew she wasn't done. As I rushed out the door, my phone buzzed. Nick, my lawyer. That was weird. He usually didn't call unless there was an update on the divorce. I picked up. Nick. His voice was sharp. Mark, where are you right now? I frowned. Heading to work. Why? A pause. Then, turn around. Go home. Now. Something in his voice made my stomach drop. What's going on? Nick exhaled. Lisa just filed for a restraining order against you. I nearly dropped my phone. What? She's claiming you've been harassing her, threatening her, and following her. She even provided evidence. I gritted my teeth. More fake messages? Nick hesitated. That, and something else. I clenched my jaw. Nick, just tell me. A deep breath. She showed the court photos of her car. Smashed windows, slashed tires. And guess who she's blaming? I stopped walking. My entire body locked up. No way. I took a slow, measured breath. Nick, you know I didn't do that. I do, he said quickly. But Mark, that doesn't matter right now. What matters is that she's playing dirty. She's trying to get ahead of you in the divorce. If this restraining order goes through, it could hurt your case. I exhaled sharply. Tell me you can stop this. I can, Nick said. But you need to be smart. Right now, she's trying to make you look like a dangerous, obsessed ex-husband. If you react the wrong way, if you lose your temper or try to confront her, it'll only help her case. I rubbed my temples. So what do I do? Nick's voice was firm. You go home. You stay calm. And you let me handle it. I barely remember the drive back. My hands were clenched so tightly around the steering wheel that my knuckles turned white. Lisa had crossed the line. Trying to ruin my job? I could handle that. But dragging my name through the mud in court? Framing me for something I didn't do? That was war. When I got home, I paced the living room, trying to process everything. Lisa had destroyed her own life, and now she was desperately trying to drag me down with her. But she had made a critical mistake. She had underestimated just how much I had planned for this. Because while she was busy faking evidence, I had something she didn't. The truth. I pulled out my laptop and opened my security footage. Lisa had forgotten one very important thing. When I had upgraded my home security last year, I didn't just add cameras inside the house. I had added cameras outside, too. And as I clicked through the footage from last night, my blood boiled. There she was, Lisa, smashing her own damn car windows, slashing her own damn tires. She thought she was being sneaky, wearing a hoodie, keeping her head down. But she had messed up, because when she turned toward the street lamp, just for a second, her face was perfectly visible. I let out a slow, cold breath. Gotcha. The next morning, I walked into court calm. Lisa was already there, sitting with her lawyer, wearing a pathetic attempt at a victim's outfit. A light cardigan, minimal makeup, the picture of a fragile, helpless woman. I barely looked at her. Nick, on the other hand, he was grinning. Ready? He whispered. I smirked. Oh yeah. The judge entered, and the hearing began. Lisa's lawyer stood first, launching into a dramatic speech about how Lisa had been living in fear, how I had become obsessed with her after the separation, how I had threatened her safety. And then, the cherry on top, he presented the photos of her destroyed car. Lisa sniffled for effect. Fake. Forced. The judge turned to us. Mr. Thompson, do you have a response? Nick stood. We do, Your Honor. And I'd like to submit new evidence into the record. The judge nodded. Proceed. Nick motioned to the court clerk, who took a USB drive and inserted it into the computer. The video played on the screen. Lisa standing next to her own car. Lisa smashing her own windows. Lisa slashing her own tires. And finally, Lisa's face, perfectly visible under the street lamp. The courtroom was silent. Then, the judge turned to Lisa, his expression cold. "Mrs. Thompson," he said slowly, "would you like to explain this?" Lisa's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Her lawyer looked like he was about to be sick. Nick leaned over to me, whispering, "This is the part where she realizes she just destroyed herself." The judge cleared his throat. "Given this new evidence, I am denying the restraining order. Furthermore, I believe this raises serious questions about Mrs. Thompson's credibility." Lisa's face was ashen. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Thompson, if you wish to press criminal charges for falsifying evidence and filing a false police report, you may do so." Lisa's eyes snapped to mine. Panic. Desperation. Because she knew. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This was fraud. This was criminal. This was jail time. She shook her head at me, silently pleading. But me, I just smiled. "Your Honor," I said, my voice calm, "I'd like to move forward with those charges." Lisa's face crumpled. And in that moment I knew. She was finally, truly, completely finished. Lisa was done. Not just in the way that she had lost her job. Not just in the way that her affair had blown up in her face. Not even in the way that Kevin had been completely wiped out and left with nothing. No. Lisa was finished in a way that meant she would never recover. She had spent the last few months believing she could lie, manipulate, and fake her way out of the hole she had dug for herself. She had convinced herself that I was the weak one, that I would just sit back and take it. But now, she was sitting in a police station, hands shaking as they took her statement. Because the moment I told the judge I wanted to move forward with charges, everything started falling apart for her. After the hearing, Lisa tried everything to stop me. She waited for me in the hallway outside the courtroom, eyes wide and filled with panic. "Mark, please." I walked right past her. She grabbed my arm. I turned, slowly, staring down at her hand until she let go. Her voice cracked. "Mark, I messed up. I didn't think." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You didn't think?" I echoed. "Lisa, you didn't just mess up. You didn't just make a mistake. You spent an entire year screwing around behind my back. You lied, you got me fired, you faked evidence against me, and then, when that wasn't enough, you tried to frame me for a crime." She swallowed. I was scared. I shook my head. "No, Lisa. You were desperate. And now you're paying for it." Her eyes filled with tears. "Mark, I don't have anyone left. I lost my job. My parents won't talk to me. I have no money, no place to go." "Not my problem." She flinched. I took a slow step toward her, lowering my voice. "You spent 17 years treating me like I was just some boring, predictable idiot. Like I was just a wimp husband you could cheat on and walk all over. But Lisa," I leaned in, watching her breath hitch, "you just learned the hard way that I'm not that guy." She shook her head. "Please, Mark, please don't do this." I gave her one last cold smirk. "Enjoy your criminal record, Lisa." And then I walked away. It only took 2 weeks for everything to catch up to her. Lisa was charged with filing a false police report, falsifying evidence, and obstruction of justice. Nothing serious enough for actual prison time, but enough that she was fined thousands of dollars and left with a permanent record. Which meant no good jobs, no career, no way to start over. She was officially, legally, and financially ruined. But the real cherry on top, Lisa's landlord kicked her out. I found out through mutual friends. Apparently, she had fallen behind on rent and begged her parents to take her in. They said no. For the first time in her life, Lisa had nowhere to go. No safety net, no backup plan, no power. And me? I was thriving. The divorce was finalized faster than expected. Nick made sure I walked away with everything. The house, the savings, my retirement fund. Lisa got nothing. Not a single penny. Not even a keepsake from the house. She was erased from my life completely. The day everything was officially over, I sat on my back porch with a cold beer in my hand, watching the sun go down. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Lisa had spent a year convincing herself that I was some weak, spineless husband, that I just accept whatever she did. But now, She was jobless, homeless, and alone. And me? I had my entire future ahead of me. I took a slow sip of my beer, savoring the moment. Then, I picked up my phone and deleted Lisa's number. For good. And with that, I stood up, stretched, and walked inside my Lisa-free home. Because for the first time in 17 years, I was finally, truly, completely happy.